Daniel Negreanu says limping is pimping. Is he right? Is he wrong? Well, it depends. If you're an elite pro playing against other elite pros, limping can be a part of a balanced strategy. But if you're a beginner, recreational player, or an old man coffee like me, limping is very likely the biggest leak in your entire game. Today, we're going to talk about why I'm guilty of it, why it's expensive, and how we can break the habit. And along the way, we're going to learn why hope is not a strategy. Roll intro. What's up, everybody? I'm Chris, and I'm bringing you along on my journey to learn game theory optimal concepts in a way that's actually understandable for normal people. The goal is simple. Let's take modern poker concepts and use them to crush cash games and run deep in tournaments. And yes, I'm an old man coffee who has struggled with modern poker concepts. And one thing I still struggle with? Limping. If you're like me, you've been in this spot 1,000 times. You're early in position, no action in front of you, and you look down at Queen Jack offsuit. You really don't want to raise. You definitely don't want to fold. So what do? You limp. And it feels safe. But it's usually the start of a very expensive mistake. In real life, I work in sales. And if you think about it, poker is sales too. Every time you put chips in the pot, you're selling a story. And there's a great sales book called Hope is Not a Strategy. This applies perfectly to poker because when you limp into a pot, your strategy is basically hope. You hope nobody raises behind you, and you hope you hit the flop. And the problem is you're not selling strength. You're selling weakness. You're basically announcing to the table, I don't have a premium hand, but I'd like to see a flop. And good players love attacking that. So today we're going to break this episode into 5 reasons why limping is so expensive for beginners, recreational players, and old man coffee players. And at the end, I'll explain which of these reasons apply more to cash games and which apply more to tournament poker. Let's get into it. Reason number 1, limping gives up initiative. The first reason limping is so bad is because it gives up one of the biggest edges in poker, initiative. In poker, you can play passive or you can take control. When you limp, you surrender the betting lead. You let other players decide the pot size, and you let someone else tell the story of the hand. But when you raise pre-flop, you now have initiative. That means you get to continuation bet on favorable flops, and you'll win a lot of pots uncontested. Here's a simple example. You raise pre-flop, the big blind calls, and the flop comes queen, 7-2, rainbow. Even if you missed completely, you can continuation bet small and win the pot a lot of the time. Why? Because your raise represents strength. But if you limp into that same pot, nobody believes you. You're far less likely to win the pot without a real hand. Initiative lets you win pots even when you miss. Limping gives that edge away, and once you give up initiative, the rest of this list starts to happen. That leads us to reason number 2. Limping lets opponents realize equity too cheaply. Let's talk about equity. The simplest definition of equity is how often you will win the pot based on your hand strength. If you have pocket queens and your opponent has ace-king, you'll win about 55% of the time. So you have about 55% equity. But here's the problem. Equity gets much worse when you go multi-way, because in poker, there's only 100% equity to go around. Heads up, it's split between 2 players. But in a 4-5-way limped pot, your equity gets chopped up fast. Let's say you limp in early position with king 10 suited, and now 3 other players call behind you with hands like ace 6 offsuit, jack 9 offsuit, 6-7 suited. Now your pretty king 10 suited isn't so pretty anymore. Instead of being in a clean heads up pot, you're now fighting 3 other ranges. And here's the real issue. When you limp, you are giving players a cheap price to enter the pot with hands that play extremely well multi-way, especially that suited connector. And suited connectors don't need to win often to be profitable. They just need to win big when they hit. If that 6-7 suited hand flops 2 pair, a straight draw, a flush draw, or a monster, they can stack you. And they get to see the flop cheaply because you limped. And this is why limping is so expensive. You're giving opponents permission to realize their equity for a bargain. As the first person into the pot, your job is to make them pay. A raise filters out those hands. A limp invites them in, and now you're hoping that you hit the flop. And remember what we said? Hope is not a strategy. Reason number 3 is that limping caps your range. And I didn't understand what this meant until recently. A capped range simply means your opponents can eliminate your strongest hands because of the way you played pre-flop. When you limp, most players assume you do not have aces, kings, queens, jacks, tens, ace king, ace queen. Now you might limp those hands occasionally, but most recreational players do not. So opponents assume you're weak, and this is where good players punish you. Because if you limp, you're basically saying, I'm not strong enough to raise. Now your opponents can isolate you, raise you, and attack you post-flop because they know you don't have the top of your range. Compare that to raising. When you raise from early position, you represent a strong range. Even if you miss the flop, your story makes sense. Let's say you limp with queen jack offsuit and the blinds come along. The flop comes ace 9-3 rainbow. If you had raised pre-flop, you could credibly represent a strong ace and continuation bet. But because you limped, your opponents don't believe you. And now you're stuck in the worst spot in poker. You missed, you have no initiative, and you can't represent strength. You're playing defense immediately. Limping caps your range and makes you easy to attack. Now let's talk about a big one. Limping reduces the expected value of your strong hands. A lot of players limp with aces or kings because they want to trap. They want someone to raise so that they can re-raise. But here's the problem. If you limp, you often either don't get raised at all and you win a tiny pot with aces, or you invite multiple callers and go multi-way. And premium hands don't want to play bloated pots against strong ranges. They want to play pots against dominated hands. If you raise with ace-king, you might get called by king-queen, king-jack, queen-jack, and all kinds of hands you dominate. That's where the money comes from. But if you limp and then re-raise, you often chase those hands away. Now you're mostly playing against hands like tens, jacks, queens, ace-king, ace-queen, and even if you still have the best hand, you've reduced your edge. So yes, you might be trying to be sneaky, but if you're an old man coffee or a beginner, don't do it. We're not good enough yet. We don't need traps. We need simple, profitable fundamentals. Premium hands make money by building pots early against weaker hands. Limping keeps the pot small and invites danger. Last but not least, reason number 5. Limping creates complex, expensive decisions. This is one of my personal favorites because it hits home. Limping feels like it reduces risk, but it actually increases the number of tough decisions you'll face. Poker isn't about avoiding risk. Poker is about avoiding bad decisions, and limping creates bad decision spots. Think about the hands most of us limp with. King jack, queen jack, ace 10, small suited aces, small pairs, suited connectors. These hands aren't garbage, but they aren't premiums either. So we limp, and then we flop something like second pair, a weak top pair, or a weak draw. And now we're asking ourselves, am I good here? The question, am I good here, is an expensive question. Limp calling is even worse. This used to be my huge leak in my game. I'd limp, someone would raise, and I'd think, well, I already put one big blind in, what's a few more? Now suddenly I'm out of position, the pot is bigger, my range is weak, and my opponent's range is strong. Let's look at a quick tournament example. You're in the middle stages of a tournament, blinds are 1,500, 3,000 with a big blind ante of 3,000. You have 25 bigs. You limp in the hijack with king jack offsuit. A good player on the button says, I'm going to punish this limper, and raises to 10,000. You call. The flop comes king 7-3 with 2 spades. You hit top pair. Sounds great, but now what? The button can easily have ace king, king queen, strong pocket pairs, sets, big draws. Now you're sitting there with top pair, no initiative, out of position, and your good pair is all of a sudden a bluff catcher. That's what limping does. It turns playable hands into complicated, stressful decisions. And in multi-way pots, it gets even worse because top pair is rarely good enough. Instead of playing poker, you're guessing and hoping. And what did we say? Hope is not a strategy. So let's quickly recap the 5 reasons limping is so expensive. 1, limping gives up initiative. 2, It lets opponents realize equity too cheaply. 3, it caps your range and makes you easy to play against. 4, it reduces the value of your premium hands. And 5, it creates difficult, expensive decisions with marginal hands. Now, all 5 of these apply to both cash and tournaments, but some matter more depending on the format. In tournaments, limping is especially bad because you give up fold equity. In tournament poker, you only have one life. Winning pots uncontested is critical to building a stack. When you limp, you give up one of the biggest weapons in tournament poker: pressure. But in cash games, limping is punished because you miss value. Cash games are all about maximizing expected value over thousands of hands. And limped pots stay small, invite multi-way action, and let opponents chase draws cheaply. Cash games also have rake, which makes small limped pots even worse. So to sum it up, tournaments punish limping because you miss fold equity. Cash games punish limping because you miss value. So here's my mantra, and I'd love for every beginner, rec player, and old man coffee to adopt. I don't limp to see a flop, I raise to see who's coming with me. Raise or fold, and yes, there are a few exceptions, like the small blind versus big blind. But if you want the simplest strategy that will instantly improve your win rate, raise or fold. So this is the point in the video where I share my bankroll progress. As a reminder, I started 2026 with a bankroll of $5,000. I'm focusing on smaller online buy-ins early in the year and saving my bigger shots for live tournament trips, like the WSOP circuit events and, of course, the World Series in Vegas in June. So stay tuned for travel vlogs and updates from those trips. Episode 2 is a wrap. Now, my next episode will actually be my recent trip to the World Series of Poker circuit stop in Cherokee, North Carolina. I cashed a couple events, including a deep run in a nightly tournament, but also learned some very valuable and expensive lessons along the way. If you found this video helpful, please hit the subscribe button, hit like, leave a comment. Let's start a discussion about what you'd like to see next. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.